Yeah, I hope that everyone out there gets a chance at some stage to come here and just ride the subway. It's like the greatest thing on earth, isn't it?
Well, firstly, it works. You know, it's pretty amazing. It goes everywhere. The gridding system in New York is awesome. You can't get lost here. You can't get lost. And there's a train every few minutes. And one of I mean, you asked me about special memories. One of my favourite memories from the making of Racine 2, because at some point I was doing some of the editing out in Brooklyn, and I would work until 2 or 3 in the morning, and I would catch the subway back into Manhattan. And at that time, firstly, it's perfectly safe, and secondly, and the subways and the tube in London stops at midnight, whereas here it runs all night. So I would come back in at 3 a.m. and the tubes are the subways aren't full at that time. Maybe there's a couple of guys who are working the night shift and people coming home from clubs. But you just kind of nod to the passengers, and everyone. It's just in the middle of the night. It's a different vibe. It's just a real community feeling when you're riding the subway together. Yeah. And that's actually one of my favourite memories, is riding the subway at 3 a.m.
Awesome. And how did the Racine come about for you? Tell us the story of that.
Well, like I say, the song started being written in London, and then I guess it became Racine the day I thought of the name. I mean, Racine is me. It's whatever. It's my creative manifestation.
It's in that movie, The Untouchables, the street.
Oh, well, it's in that. It's in that, yeah. But it's also in all the other Al Capone movies as well. So Racine, the reason I called it Racine is a mixture of 2 accidents or references. One is it really is a street in Chicago, and on this street was the club where Al Capone ran his prohibition business from. And it happened, and I found out recently it's the longest street in America. It runs from the Great Lakes all through the whole state of Illinois.
Wow.
That's Racine. But I called it because I'd seen Edward G. Robinson, Al Capone, all the basic mobster movies that touch on Capone. You always see some reference to Racine. And when Transvision Vamp played in Chicago for the first time, that was my little Chicago holy grail way back as a teenager, to walk down Racine, because I always thought on the movies it looked like, you know, a perfect American street sign. Street signs in America look good, and Racine just seemed to be a very poetic sounding word. I don't know, it rolled off the tongue really nicely. And then years later, one of my favourite authors is he's dead now, but he was a sports writer and columnist about the seedy underbelly of New York in the 40s and 50s, called Damon Runyon. He's actually the guy that wrote all the short stories that became Guys and Dolls. And but he was basically a sports writer. He would write about racing, horse racing and boxing, and also the kind of 2-bit gangsters. They weren't really called gangsters then, hustlers, that would run Broadway, Midtown Broadway, you know. And so I collected all of his books, and one day I saw a book I hadn't heard of before, and it was called The Racing World of Damon Runyon. So I bought the book, and a few days later at home I misread it as not the Racing World but the Racine World. And in that flash I remembered Chicago, and I always loved that name, and everything came to me, and I remember saying to someone, I've got it. It is going to be called Racine. It looks great on a t-shirt, it looks amazing in front of a club venue, you know, up in lights. It's a really good name. And for me, and then my French girlfriends told me that in the French language it means roots, which adds even more meaning, clarity and righteousness to my decision for it to be, because this is inherently Wendy James. And so
you're lucky no one else had it. Or did they? No, I did actually get my lawyer to get hold of it for me. Yeah. Awesome. So I ask a lot of people about their dreams and stuff like that, and particularly proving if anything's possible. Are you a big believer that anything's possible, looking back on your story?
Within the limits of your own ability, yes, anything is possible. If you dream and you work, I mean, the key to it is work. it can't. I've met a lot of musicians that say they want to be successful and they want to be in a rock and roll band and they want to be famous, but they don't. You know, it's a rare few that have that every single day, 24/7 drive. Honestly, to the detriment of any other aspect of a lifestyle you may wish to have, like husbands, wives, money, you know, all these things completely go by the wayside if you have that drive. But if you do have that drive, then you will get there, absolutely, because you live and breathe it every single day, and it's naturally within you that things are never good enough. So you may write one song and be really pleased with it, but that feeling is very fleeting, and well, no, you will always be pleased with it, but it's not enough to satisfy you, and very, very quickly you're on to writing the next one. And that's just a drive, and whether you're famous or not famous, that's just a drive that the few that make it just naturally have. That's all they live for. So within that context, yeah, anything, you can do anything.
So, with, like now in New York, with the group, what's going on? And obviously MySpace too, because that's how we actually got in touch off MySpace, got you on the radio, so tell everyone about that, how they find you.
Oh, well, what, the actual address? Yes. But they're already on MySpace.
I'm going to put it under
there anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then,
how have you found MySpace then?
How have I found it?
Yeah, it's working for you. It's a pretty crazy sort of system, isn't it?
Honestly, well, the same thing for you. I think the revolution has arrived.
Yes.
In as much that between YouTube and MySpace, and then for me as a musician, internet magazines like Pitchfork and Buddyhead, and even iTunes and the other digital distribution outlets, basically the power has completely gone back into the hands of the creator and the fan, and the middleman, the bureaucracy, the labels have totally been shunted to the side. Now that's not to say that if you want to climb right to the top of the ladder at some point you're going to have to involve those people, but I was thinking about gigging across America, because Racine is going to do its first American tour in September, October. Ooh. And there are so many bands from England that don't make it over here. I mean, it's slightly different for me now because I live here, but because of the power of MySpace, it's made it possible for some kid in Missouri, or it must be the same in Australia, who they now all have complete access to what's hip and happening in all the metropolises. And previously that wouldn't have been possible, because previously you would have had to have a record deal, which would have hired a PR company to do a promotion campaign and a radio campaign, and then people would have started to hear about you. Now you can record it, stick it up on MySpace, and some kid in Arkansas can get into you, and you know, that's a revolution.
That's the only thing it's possible right there.
It really is, and yeah, it's. Well, there's nothing more to say, is it? It really is a revolution, and it's changed the way we all... It's brought the people that matter closer together, and the people that matter always have been and always will be the audience and the artist. Yeah. Those are the two elements that you can't do without. You can do without a million lawyers, because there's always another million to fill their shoes, and you can do without, you know, the bureaucracy of people pandering to you and your ego, or accountants and all of this stuff. There's always someone else, but the audience and the artist cannot be replaced. Yeah. And so it's put the power back where it should be, and it's made Racine very, very exciting, because we've managed to do... We just off of one European tour, and 80% of those shows were sold out, and they were sold out purely because, and there was no PR campaign around them, they were sold out purely on the basis of fans getting into us through MySpace. And so the whole thing proliferates from the people that matter, like I say, kids telling kids telling kids.
Very, very cool, and very cool to meet you here in New York for a little chat under a tree with a band playing behind us and the kids running around. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and I'll be in Australia soon.
Yes, you will. All right, cool.